Hey everyone, LittleMoeGaming here. Welcome finally to my Games of the Year for 2025 video. It's overdue. I know, we're almost, we're in the Ides of March now, going into April. I moved at the beginning of the year, if you're not aware. You can see this is a completely new room here. You probably only see what's behind me. It's filled with a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. And I didn't really get a table in here yet, so I'm actually just chilling on the floor right now, just all casual, in front of my collectibles here, and some of my wife's art. You can see she's got that one and that one. I think Negan is back there somewhere, like right there. Yeah, just wanted to finally record my Games of the Year for 2025, and we're just gonna do it casual. I'm sitting here on the floor. I've got stack of games here. I've got my Nintendo Switch. I'm gonna be doing things a little different. If you watched my Games of the Year for 2024, I approached it as more of a top 10 list, right? Like I talked about some honorable mentions and then I had my top 10 games of the year. I wanted to do something a little more unique. I'm approaching it more as like a Game Awards type thing, so, and this is kind of arbitrary, right? It's kind of in a way that, everything is gonna change year to year based on the games that I played that year, what they meant to me. And there's going to be some 2025 games. There's also going to be a lot of older games. And my hope for you in watching this video is that you get to see a bunch of cool games that I played last year. And maybe there's some games in there that you would have never thought about playing that you'll be like, hey, I'm going to check that out. Let's go ahead and get into it. So the first award here is a game that kicked off 2025 for me, and that's none other than Judgment. When I started this channel back in like late 2024, early 2025, you would have seen me putting a lot of footage of Judgment, and that's because it was the first game I played last year. I'm a big fan of the Yakuza series. Judgment has always been on my backlog. I never got into it back when it came out, and I wanted to play the Yakuza games one by one and kind of go in order of release. I did kick off 2025 with Judgment, and what can I say about this game? It was so good. It's the same formula as Yakuza. If you've played Yakuza, this is going to be very familiar. Playing as a detective, you're not playing as a Yakuza, and there's some missions where it's all about, like, trying to figure out. I wish I could say that it was very, like complicated in that you actually use your detective skills, but it's more so just kind of following his story. So it's not like if you think that you're going to go in here and it's going to like test your brain and your knowledge and how you can be a detective. That's not what this is, but it's really cool. There's a lot of tailing missions, which I'll say, like, I think the tailing missions were kind of lame. Overall, the story was really good. The combat is incredibly fun. It plays differently than Yakuza, and you can tell that in the kind of character that he is, and his skill set and what he's learned. But Judgment was a very good game and a great way to start the year 2025. The next game I want to award is the game that I started in 2025, but I really need to jump back into it and finish it. And that's going to be for Sword of the Sea. Sword of the Sea, if you don't know what it is, it's from the developers behind Journey, Abzu. I think they had a game called Flower as well. Very atmospheric. You kind of glide around like different terrains, like kind of a desert terrain. You're collecting like the currency that you can use to unlock more abilities. And it's just a vibes game. It's all about the vibes. And I started this game last year in 2025. But it's funny, I actually stopped playing it because my PS Plus membership ended. And I didn't want to renew it at the time. So no, I haven't gotten back into it. I really do want to though, because it's a great game. It's beautiful. I really don't have much more to say on it because I didn't finish the game, but the amount that I did play, I'd like to say that I played about a third of the game. It was so incredible. I've shown footage of it on my channel and I'll be showing some footage here. But yeah, Sword of the Sea, a game that I really enjoy playing, but I really need to get back into it and finish it. Now, 2025 was a year where I really tried to explore different arcadey kind of games, or session games, right? Games that you can pick up and play for 10 minutes and, put it down and you would have had a great session, and that's that. That included a lot of racing games, and there were definitely a lot of racing games that I tried last year, all of them very good in their own way. But the number one racing game for 2025 was Fast RMX. I don't have a physical copy. I think they did make one. It's very expensive, but I have it digitally here on my Switch. And Fast RMX is such a fun, exhilarating racing game where, it's kind of akin to like F-Zero and those kinds of games, Wipeout. I actually did play Wipeout as well, but Fast RMX really clicked with me. I love the mechanics in that you can speed up on the blue lines or the orange lines, and you have to match the color to be able to take advantage of it. And if you don't, you get punished. And then, of course, collecting the boost orbs so you can build up your boost bar. Very, very satisfying when you can finally unleash the whole boost bar and go in for the win. Fast RMX was really good, and I have a really kind of a core memory right now of that game, in that the first time I ever booted it up was actually on the plane on the way to Houston. So we were actually flying into Houston to visit my family, and I pulled out my Switch and I didn't know what to play, and I had Fast RMX downloaded, and I thought, what better time to try it than right now, right here, right now. And I pulled it out, started playing it, and I've gone through most of the stages in the game, because really it's just one of those games that I would pull out and play 15 minutes before bed, just go through a set of races and then put it away. And it was really, really good for that. So racing game of the year for sure for me was Fast RMX. Now, this next game, this is going to be one of those kind of unique awards, right, that I might not have every year. This is the game that I started in 2025, gave up on, but highly respect. And that's for Mortal Shell. If you don't know what Mortal Shell is, it's a Souls-like. It's actually pretty critically acclaimed. A lot of people said it was a good game back when it came out. And I remember hearing about it, and I always wanted to try it, but I never did. What can I say about Mortal Shell? It's a very good Souls-like, and it has a lot of unique mechanics that, other Souls-like don't have. But I think that's kind of why I gave up on it. It was a little too much for me. I do enjoy the Souls-like genre a lot, right? Dark Souls, Elden Ring. I have the Shadow of the Erdtree statue up there, so I'm a big fan of Elden Ring and Souls-likes in general. But Mortal Shell, it was just a little too complicated. As far as the mechanic of how you heal in the game, you have to hit your enemy a certain way and then hit another button timed at the right time, and you'll be able to heal. And then when you pick up items, every time you use that item, there's lore behind it that you unlock every time you use it, which is really cool. And that's why I say I really respect this game, because it has unique mechanics that other games don't have, and it actually feels good to play. At first it feels a little clunky, but once you actually get used to the controls, it feels good to play. But for me, I just had to give up on it at the time. I wasn't really feeling it. I don't know if it's something that I would ever get back into. Maybe they're actually doing a sequel, which the trailer for was really, really amazing. So I don't know. We'll see. Mortal Shell is that game that I started that I just couldn't continue with. Maybe one day, maybe not. We'll see. That's all I got to say about Mortal Shell. Highly recommend you try it though. It's a cool game. And for my next award, it's going to be for my VR game of the year. There's a few different VR games I played this year, but the one that stood out to me the most was The Midnight Walk. This one was actually a surprise for me. I remember the initial trailer for the game, and I thought, wow, this looks pretty cool. Kind of like indie game vibes. It seems like it has an interesting story. but I thought it was just a normal game. And then when the game came out, I immediately bought it. I booted it up to play, and I was playing it on the TV. And then I found out it had a VR mode, and that changed my experience completely. I put on my my VR headset, got lost in this cartoony, almost like Nightmare Before Christmas vibes, like very, very dark world that's got really cool characters and a very touching story. You know, it's like it's a story about death, right? Like, you died and you're in the world of death, and you're exploring and trying to get to the mountain and all that. I will be honest, I didn't actually 100% complete the game. I think I'm mostly there, but that's just because it is a VR game, and with my time and that I have and my free time to play, it's few and far in between that I put on the VR headset. But I definitely am going to go back in there and complete the game. But for the amount of time I did spend in the game, I mean, there was this one level, you get approached by like this giant bird, and it's super creepy to look at, but amazing to look at, especially when you're wearing VR. And he's like telling you these stories, and you have to like pick the right match the right characters, kind of like a puzzle thing. It's really hard to explain. You'll probably see in some footage here, but there are a lot of cool moments like that. There's really cool stealthy moments where you kind of panic to hide from the monster, and then it turns out that the monster has like a really heartbreaking story behind it, and why it is a monster and why it does the things that it does. And it's just like, it's a really, really unique experience, and I highly recommend it if you have VR and it's available on your platform. Highly recommend trying out the Midnight Walk.
See with your eyes.
Like I said, in 2025, I tried to play a lot of arcade games and those kind of small session games that also included fighting games. So I tried a bunch of different ones. The one that I will say was my fighting game of the year, though, has to be Street Fighter 2, specifically on the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection. I popped this in. I remember I picked this up at Walmart, I think for like less than $10 or something. And I popped it in. I'm not much of a Street Fighter guy. Like, I didn't play a lot of the older ones, but I've always heard good things about Street Fighter 2. And I got absolutely sucked in, and I started grinding out E Honda and just played through his entire, I don't want to say story, but like his fights, right? Like all the way to the end. And it was difficult. It was very difficult. I played it on my Switch. So there were times where like I'd go into the bathroom and I'd take it in there with me just to get a little practice. Yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of Street Fighter 2. And I also tried a couple of the other Street Fighters on here. Yeah, Street Fighter Alpha 2 was really cool as well, but the one that really stood out to me was Street Fighter 2. And I played as a few different characters, but E Honda was the guy that I played, and I played through his entire thing, and I'd say this is the fighting game I spent the most time in last year. So for me, this was my fighting game of the year, and I highly recommend trying it if you haven't. Definitely an older fighting game, but it's really cool in the art style and the way it looks and the way it plays. And that was just really charming to me. So of course, lately, the past few years, we've been getting a lot of remakes and remasters. That's no different in 2025. And for me, the remake of the year, as far as remakes that I did play, and I did play a few, but the one that really stood out to me was Gears of War Reloaded. This was a huge shock, right? That we were getting a Gears of War game on PS5 finally, and of course we're getting Halo later on down the line, so we'll talk about that later. But Gears of War, what can I say? I don't have a lot of experience with it back in the day, right? I didn't really play it on Xbox. I dabbled with it a little bit here and there at a friend's house, and I had like the remaster that was released on Xbox One, but I didn't really play too much of it. But they brought it to the PS5. They called it Gears of War Reloaded. What an incredible experience this game is. I mean, from the graphics and the way the game looks to the, just the way it plays, especially with the DualSense controller. When you're firing that gun, I mean, you feel like you're firing that gun. The way it makes the trigger move and uses that technology. That's why for me, this would be the remake of the year, because it was remade so well. And it just plays so well. I don't know if it's technically a remake or just a really like big remaster of the game, but whichever one you want to call it, it was done so well and it really made for a good experience. So yeah, Gears of War Reloaded, if you haven't tried it yet, especially if you have a PS5 and you got that DualSense controller, I highly recommend giving it a shot because it's such a fun experience.
Control, this is Delta. We're clear.
Still sticking in the shooter genre here, I got a kind of one of those unique ones here. So a lot of games coming out these days are really trying to bring back the old like Doom style games and those arcadey kind of shooters. And for me, this is my Boomer Shooter of the Year award, and it goes to Dusk. If you haven't heard of this game, it's exactly like what I explained. It's kind of mimicking that old style of shooter, kind of like Wolfenstein and Doom, but it's doing its own thing. It's kind of dark, fighting a bunch of, I want to say, cultists. Just so smooth, right? It's so smooth. It has that old school look to it, but it's a new game that came out, I think, a few years ago. So I had to pick this up on Switch. It's been very hard to find on Switch, but I found it on a good sale. And yeah, this is one of those, again, arcadey experiences that I would jump into from time to time this year and just have an absolute blast playing Dusk. And then still in the spirit of the shooter genre, my next award is going to be my shmup of the year. Trying to experience a lot of different shmups this year. The one that really stood out to me is called Soldner X2. It has a much bigger title than that. I'll make sure to put it here, but Soldner X2 was just a really fun shoot 'em up for me to jump onto on my PlayStation from time to time. It's just the way that the levels look, right? When you're going through the levels and the backgrounds and the music, there's a level that has this song that I've been trying to find for years. Kind of a long story short, but a YouTuber that I watch, he tends to put this soundtrack in his videos, and it always stood out to me, and I was like, where is this from? And it took a lot of effort for me to find out what game it was from, and I found out it was from Soldner. And I tried the game out because, I've been trying to play a lot of different shoot 'em ups. Radiant Silvergun was one that I spent a lot of time in, and I'll talk about that a little later in the video. This one really stood out to me, not only for the gameplay, but for the soundtrack and the way that the boss fights are. It was a very short game, and I know there's a lot of more endgame stuff after that, but for me, these shoot 'em up games are just games that I like to boot up from time to time, go in, and shoot 'em up, and just have a fun little session in that. And so Soldner X2 was my shoot 'em up of the year for 2025.
No sleeping in the cockpit.
Moving out of the shooter genre now, we're going to jump into kind of a more normal category here, and that's going to be for my action game of the year. And that has to go Stellar Blade. So the cover here, this is like the reversible cover. I just found it was really cool. Stellar Blade, I mean, what can I say about this game? It came out, I think, a couple years ago now, so technically it's not a 2025 game, but 2025 is when I finally got around to playing it. Everything about this game just works. I mean, the combat is super satisfying. You really feel every hit, every move, every parry, especially with the DualSense controller. You can tell this game was built for the PS5. And the story was really good. The music is incredible. It's a very long soundtrack. I'll put it on from time to time in the car on my commute, but I've never been able to go through the entire thing because it's just so long. Such an incredible soundtrack, and it really fits the world that they built there. The story's really good. The combat's really good. I really don't have any more to say than that. It's just a really, really fun action game, and I highly recommend trying it if you haven't. We've talked a little bit about different game soundtracks that I enjoyed this year. The next two awards that I have are a little more about soundtracks. And so the first one is going to be my video game vinyl of the year. I do have a vinyl player and I collect vinyls for it. I don't have a lot of video game soundtracks, but I started to kind of get into, collecting video game soundtracks and, listening to them from time to time. It wasn't until I moved into this apartment that I was able to just set up my vinyl player and have it in a space where I can actually hang out, listen to a vinyl, while just playing a game or doing some activity. I found this vinyl in it's in like a used collectibles shop in San Antonio, Texas. It was a few years ago before I moved to Colorado. I went there with my friends. And I was looking through the vinyls and I found this. I'm very familiar with the video game series. I just never actually played through it, but I've always heard it has good music. So I picked it up and it was called Mana Wave. I thought at first that this was like actually an official Secret of Mana album or something like that. But I come to find out that this is actually, I want to say it's kind of like a fan-made remix of the Secret of Mana soundtrack, the soundtrack for Secret of Mana. It's already really, really good on its own, but this is kind of a remix version, but it's really, really nice. I popped this in sometime during 2025. It was when my wife was traveling in Syria, and I just wanted to pop in a vinyl, while I was cooking dinner, and I thought, let me finally listen to this, and the music is so good. It's just chill, relaxed, vibey, atmospheric. I listened to the original versions of these songs and they were very, very good too. But here there's just like an extra touch to it, kind of a remix version, but it's still very relaxing. The Mana series, I don't have a lot of experience with, but I recently picked up a collection of Mana that has the original 3 Mana games from like the Super Nintendo days, as well as I think there's a Game Boy game on there. And I recently started playing those. Very, very fun games, good music. Mana Wave wins my video game vinyl of the year. We'll see if I have this category next year. I don't know. I don't have a lot more video game vinyls right now, but if I collect a couple more and I have enough to compare, we might do another one. But for this year, Mana Wave wins it. And then that'll take me into my video game soundtrack of the year that made me feel something. I can't think of another game to give it to than Death Stranding 2. Woodkid was behind the soundtrack of this game, and I'm not talking about the actual score of the game. The score is really good. It's really nice. But Woodkid, he came in and he made an entire soundtrack, with music and songs, and it's just so, so good, and it fits the world of Death Stranding so well, and the story that they're telling. I'll never forget playing the game, getting into the level where you meet Rainey and seeing her backstory and what happened to her and why she, is in the situation that she's in, and the music that played. I mean, it was really, really emotional, and that's just it. A lot of the music in the game is very emotional, and it really makes you feel something, especially when you put it in context with what's going on in the game. Amazing stuff, and not only that, but even the various artists, right? They brought in a lot of different songs and music into the game. From various different artists, some Japanese artists, and of course Low Roar, who Kojima brought into the first game as well. And yeah, it's just, a very unique set of music for a game, and it's the soundtrack that really stood out to me this year. There were definitely a few other good ones, but this is the biggest one. When my wife was traveling overseas to Syria, this was shortly after Syria got freed from the regime that was holding it down. If you don't know, I'm from Syria. My wife's from Syria, and it was under like a really strong, really terrible regime for a long time under the Assad family. And then it finally got freed, and my wife was able to go back there so that she can try to get some work done that she had to put on hold because she had to leave Syria. That's a long story. Maybe I'll talk about it someday. She went over there, and I was a little concerned because, things were still a little sketchy over there. But, I had faith that she was going to be okay. And, while she was gone, one of the games that I played was Death Stranding 2, and I would listen to that music. And, a lot of that music, when I listen to it, it reminds me of those days of, my wife being over there, and I was really concerned about it. But at the same time, like, I had a lot of faith that she was going to be okay. It's that powerful connection that music can have to certain memories in your life. Death Stranding 2, the soundtrack definitely is something that I'll never forget, and it's always going to have that special place for me. This next category, this is an awesome one that I had a lot of good times with this year, but I played a lot of older games, and this category, I want to call it the older games that I played in 2025 that really stood out to me. And for this, it's going to go to 2 games, but that's okay because they're very similar and they come from the same developer. Resident Evil 1 Remake and Onimusha. Those were 2 really incredible experiences. I played Onimusha first, and I definitely showed a lot of footage of that this year. I'll be putting some of that here. Great boss fights, great atmosphere. All the levels are like hand-painted and handcrafted, and you get to play around in them. And the combat's just really, really good, and the story was good. It was just an overall really fun game. And the same thing can be said about Resident Evil 1. I never played it before. This is the remake version. Absolutely stunning visuals. Gameplay was super fun. It's a little clunky, right? It's not your traditional shooter or anything like that. Not like the new Resident Evil remakes. But it's still very satisfying to play. And the story was really good. And I think I got a pretty decent ending. Yeah, there's like several different endings in the game, and I played as much as I could in there to get a good ending, and I think I did. I think they're going to be remaking it kind of in the vein of like the new remakes and be able to explore the mansion in a whole new different way. Resident Evil 1 and Onimusha. Absolutely fantastic older games that I played last year, and I highly recommend that you try them out if you haven't.
Yamero! たとえこの身が滅びようとお前だけは必ず倒す
I did replay a few games last year, games that I've played before in the past. There's one that really stood out to me, and this is honestly one of my favorite games of all time, and I decided to go ahead and replay it last year in 2025. So this award goes to a game that I replayed from my childhood that I will always replay no matter what. And that's going to go to none other than Paper Mario. That's right, you're seeing it on my Switch here. This is through the Nintendo 64 Classics catalog. It's actually where I replayed it. Very competent way to play the game. But yeah, Paper Mario is just such a special game to me because it's kind of technically my first major video game experience from when I was a kid. Now, technically, you could say the first game I ever really played was Mario back on the NES because my parents had an NES when I was growing up, and we would play Mario 1 and Mario 3 on there and a bunch of other games. But when I grew up a little bit, right, and I started getting into elementary school and I was, able to kind of do my own thing, I will never forget my dad. He got me a Nintendo 64 with Pokemon Stadium 2. And we bought a few other games for it. And so this new game came out, right? It was called Paper Mario. And I remember seeing the trailers, like the commercials for this game, and it looked so surreal and so weird. And I was always thinking, that's so weird. Like, you play as a piece of paper and everything. But we got the game, and the first time I ever experienced it was actually watching my dad play through it. I'll never forget that experience. And then I played through it multiple times after that. It was such a memorable time in my childhood when, Paper Mario was that game that I would replay over and over again. It's the first RPG, really, besides Pokemon. Yeah, I even replayed a little bit of Pokemon Silver last year, which was also technically one of my first video games I ever played. But Paper Mario is that one that'll always stand out to me. The music is incredible, the way the game looks, the characters. They recently remade Thousand Year Door, and that's a really amazing game too. But the first Paper Mario will always be the one that holds a special spot in my heart, because that's the one I played when I was a kid, and I played it over and over again. And yeah, it's an incredible game, and it definitely deserves a spot on this list as being the best game I replayed this year from my childhood. The next award I want to give, this is also one of those unique awards. There's a few different times that my wife and I kind of traveled last year. A couple times to Houston and a couple times locally here in Colorado. And the last trip that we took was to Ouray, Colorado. I took my Switch with me. And this award goes to Best Travel Buddy Video Game of the Year for 2025. Let's just call it that. And that was for WarioWare Get It Together. To me, this is the perfect game to play when you're traveling, because it's just a bunch of mini games. And, literally, this is, I think, the definition of like a session game that you can just pop in and play for 10 or 15 minutes and have a blast. And so there were several moments during the trip where I would just, wake up early, take out my Switch and, play some WarioWare and try to get through the levels. It can get pretty difficult, but it's really, really fun. And I had a lot of fun playing it.
Piece of cake. Okay.
Hypnotize.
The next award, kind of going back into that nostalgic kind of area, but this is for the game from my childhood that I never got the chance to play as a kid, but I finally got a chance to play it now. Long award title there, but that's for Luigi's Mansion. This is the first Luigi's Mansion. It was brought onto the 3DS, and I got I think I got the like Middle Eastern version there, but it works on, American 3DSs. It was an incredible game to experience. It's just, it's Luigi's Mansion. And when I was a kid, it's one of those, again, just like Pikmin, I didn't really get a chance to play it as a kid. And I've always wanted to experience it. So I picked it up for 3DS, playing a little bit before bed every day. It was a little spooky. But it's that goofy spooky, nothing too scary like Silent Hill or anything like that. But really, really fun game, charming, and, maybe one day I'd like to play it on an actual GameCube just to have that experience. But honestly, the 3DS version is so good, and the controls are really intuitive, and it uses the 3DS to its advantage. So I know it's not the original version, but it's very, very close. And it was an awesome experience. Really loved playing Luigi's Mansion in 2025. This is the video game that I started in 2025, but actually finished in 2026, and that's going to go to No More Heroes. So I'm talking about this now because I started in 2025 and played the bulk of it then. Actually, I finished it pretty recently. No More Heroes is really good. I kind of put it with the Yakuza games, and that it's just like a unique Japanese kind of stylish game that's got a lot of fun elements to it. This is the first one in the series. First time I ever played it. There's a few other games in the series. Romeo is a Dead Man just came out, which is from the same developer, and I heard that's really great. But yeah, No More Heroes is fun. Just fun, mindless action. It's got little mini games that you use to build up money so you can move up to the next main quest. It's just a pure action game. Really, really fun, goofy, and I highly recommend playing it.
Fuckhead! Yo, help me out here. Where's this death metal dude?
More of a traditional category, and that's for my narrative game of the year. There's a lot of games I played this year that have really incredible stories. I think this one stands out as the narrative game of the year for me, and that's going to be Mafia Definitive Edition. It's a really incredible game. The story's really good. That's kind of why we're talking about it here, is for the story. I love the dynamic between, the mob and the character you're playing as and where that goes. I'm not going to spoil anything, but even the racing section of the game, which was super frustrating at one point, even that became really, really fun. And it just had a really nice place in the story. Everything kind of lined up perfectly. Highly recommend trying it if you haven't. I haven't played the new Mafia Old Country yet. Heard that's really good as well.
Plane they're gonna use is Don Morello's. I'm sure of it.
Here we are, we're getting to our game of the year, but before we get there, I want to talk about some honorable mentions. Last year, I put them at the beginning of the video. I wanted to go ahead and throw them in right before, kind of run through them real quick. Eartheon, it's a new shoot 'em up that came out last year. Neo Geo Selection Volume 1. This is the first volume in 10. I only have this one right now. One day I'll probably have all 10. But yeah, just a bunch of fun Neo Geo games. If you don't know, Neo Geo is an old arcade style thing that had a console come out, and they made a bunch of collections with the games. And it's the best way to experience it on modern consoles. And I picked up Volume 1 here, and it was really fun. Daemon X Machina. I'm playing through this game. I'm not finished with it yet, but I did spend a lot of time in 2025 playing it. It's a fun mecha game, with anime aesthetics. Really, really fun. The sequel just came out. It's on PS5, but if you haven't played the original, I think it's only on Switch. Highly recommend trying it if you have a Switch. Slipstream is kind of like an Outrun-like that just came out, it came out a couple years ago, I think. But I picked it up this year on Switch. Beautiful game, great graphics, looks very similar to Outrun and those old Sega games. But it has a fun mechanic on it where you get to ride other people's slipstream and use it. Highly recommend checking it out. One last racing game to talk about here, and that's Cruise and Blast. This is the definition of arcade racing. Really, really fun. Not much more to say there. Try it out if you haven't. And last but not least, for my honorable mentions, Capcom Fighting Collection. This is a very fun collection of old Capcom arcade games. I really enjoyed Red Earth because it's just more of a unique kind of RPG style on here. But yeah, I played a bunch of different games on here. I just had a really good time. Now we're getting into the last two awards. And before I get to my actual game of the year, I want to talk about my game of the year if my actual game of the year did not exist. This absolutely would have been my game of the year. It was a really tough choice between these two games. There's a reason why I selected my actual game of the year. This definitely would have been, and that's Death Stranding 2. This is the slipcover reversed. I played Death Stranding 2 in 2025, and it was my most anticipated game of the year. I played through the entire game. I tried to 100% everything, but it was just too much for me to handle. But I got through the entire story. What an incredible sequel. I don't know for sure if we're going to be getting a Death Stranding 3 based on the way the game ended. I honestly don't know. If we don't, it was a really good conclusion. And I highly recommend trying it if you haven't. It's got the unique, Kojima style, the surrealness of Death Stranding, if you're familiar with that. And the music, I already talked about the soundtrack earlier, is a very core experience of the game. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. It's one of the best games I've ever played. And like I said, it would have been my game of the year if it wasn't for my actual game of the year. And so my actual game of the year goes to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. This is an incredible game. I honestly think this got snubbed at the Game Awards for RPG of the Year because the RPG mechanics alone in here, what you can do, right, to customize your character and your playstyle, I haven't seen it in any other game. It's a hard game, especially in the first, like, I say, I was telling my friends, like, I think the first, like, 10 to 15 hours of the game, it's going to be kind of hard to get through. So yes, this is one of those games that gets better as you play, but I just love the dynamic of starting with nothing and having to work your way up to be able to just survive this world and get through it. When you get a hang of the combat and you unlock different abilities and stuff, there's a certain ability you unlock in the game. I think it's called the Master Strike. Once you unlock that, combat just kind of opens up and becomes a lot more approachable. It's still very difficult, but it makes it a lot easier. The horsemanship, right? Like riding your horse in the world, the way the world looks. There's no ray tracing in this game or any of that fancy stuff. It just looks good. And it runs really well on PS5 Pro. At least that's where I played it. But it also runs very well on the OG PS5 and especially on PC. You can do a lot with that. But it's just such an incredible game. The story, I will say, I haven't finished the game yet, but that's because there's just so much in the game. I'm close to the end, I think, in the story. I'm getting there. I think maybe I have about 30% left, but there's so much side content that's very, very, like, meaty and juicy and, you know, worth your while. And the DLCs are really good. So I think for me, KCD2, this is going to be the kind of game that I'm just going to jump back into it from time to time, kind of like an MMO. And I actually plan on getting back into it soon. I just finished playing Expedition 33, so I'll probably jump back into KCD2 and, you know, play a little bit more in there. Every time I jump back in, I have put like 10 or 20 hours into it, make some progress, play some side content. So incredible. And the first game actually just got remastered, where they made it more approachable for modern consoles and, like, you know, the controls of KCD2. So I don't know if I'll ever go back and play the first game because the second game is so big. It's a massive game, but it's really, really rewarding and fun to play. And you can really, truly get lost in the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance. So I highly recommend Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as my game of the year for 2025.
There's some horsemen right out front of your fortress.
Ah, that's Peter of Pisac. Wouldn't come to the council, but he is coming happily to the celebration, you old fox.
Come on in, sir. There's wine aplenty.
And that does it. Thanks for watching. This is my 2025 Game Awards. I hope you like the new style that I did. I'm not on a table or anything. It's very casual. I'm just sitting on the floor talking about video games. But I had a lot of fun talking about all these games. It's a little overdue in the making here, but I'm finally getting around to putting this out, and I'm very excited to do so. 26 has been really great so far with certain games that I've played. I can't wait to talk about those at the end of the year, and hopefully in a more timely manner this time. But yeah, these were the games that really meant a lot to me in 2025. Let me know down below if you've played any of these games and which one is your favorite, or what was your game of the year. You know, I look forward to making more content hopefully this year and putting out more fun, unique videos. I had a lot of fun doing it this way rather than just doing like a top 10 list. Watch this all the way to the end. I really appreciate you. As always, take care.